Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Australian Survivor Redemption. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, here to talk about episode 2 and what should be my guest should be Puya for episode 2, the global traders expert for this traders-centric episode. But instead, we have Mike Blue. Mike, thank you for being here.
Wow, what a great introduction of I wish you were somebody else,
I
Shannon.
don't wish. I'm just saying we
Love
get
it.
the traders expert tomorrow. Tonight we get Mike, so that's what's happening.
Listen, give Puya a little bit of time to decompress, deal with the fact that the first Traders to Survivor crossover went much more poorly, perhaps, than expected. But man, in such a fun way. I've been having such a good time with Redemption so far. I mean, this is always kind of low-key my favorite part of not even Australian Survivor, but a lot of these social strategy games is like the period of time where people get their sea legs, and we see a lot of people just completely torch their own games as they're learning on the fly. And this time is no different, as we've seen. Last time, yes, it was a little bit of like a self-inflicted wound by Daniel, but more so someone like Lottie jumping on the opportunity. This was like flat out sinking your own ship when it was all well and good when it left the dock. So I'm really excited to get into this.
Yeah, and I should have been calling you the Faith to my Mark, the Brooke to my Mark, the Keeley to my Mark. So there's been a lot of good options for people who are playing
One
hard.
of those things is not like the other, I think. Though I don't know. I mean, Mark did pull Keeley aside first rather than Brooke and
he
Faith.
loves Keeley. He loves all of them. It's very clear about what Mark's trying to do.
I think Brooke is the number one on his like adoration list. From a partnership perspective, Faith is number one, but I have held a years-long adoration for you, nothing really trumps that.
Well, I mean, it's hard to get past it when they're basically like editing in like heart eye emojis and like it's like genuinely like a montage. A lot of it is in the power of the montage. I love the edit in this episode with parts of like when they were editing Johnson like seamlessly talking to each person. That was
so good. I'm a
so
sucker for that type of montage in particular. Definitely shades of Aubrey in Edge of Extinction with Let's Sit Down and Have a Dialogue, which is ironic considering that she
does have an idol.
Yeah, Jay does have an idol. Ironic considering that she was one of the 4 returnees on an all newbie cast when like this is a similarly structured season, but it more so seems like Johnson here is the one trying to come in and swing his own expertise around to his detriment.
Yeah, I mean, Johnson as my first newbie draft pick. I wasn't loving. I don't know how they do things on Big Brother, but there was a lot of question marks that I had that I will have through the podcast. Mike, were you enjoying the season? How you feel about it? David as host, all the top level thoughts.
David as a host is fine. I feel like he has some nice back and forths that I've seen. I do love. I feel like there was one like little quip he had during the challenge. Oh yeah, he talked about Simon being a cat, being a reference to obviously his whole 9 Lives shtick from something like Heroes versus Villains when he was climbing the scaffolding. Also another great moment of editing. We're not going to really talk about the Bounty Purple Tribe at all, but like that Simon moment was so much fun. This is why we love Simon, is him trying to pump himself up in this make or break point of the challenge by saying, come on, Chippy, climb the scaff, don't drop your tools. It's so
I love
good.
him. He's a puppy dog.
I love him so much, despite him being a cat, according to David. Going back to David proper, I mean, yeah, it's still a little odd to just get used to it. I mean, hearing him do the previously on was weird. You would think that, like, was JLP sick this week? Oh, no, this is actually another man. And to that point, I do think that, whether David is trying to do a JLP impression, whether he has been prompted to do a JLP impression by production, it's going to warrant those comparisons. But I think he's absolutely serviceable at this point. He is doing the job. He's doing Survivor's Ready, Go. He's doing Want to Know What You're Playing For. I wouldn't say anything is incredibly next level, nor would I say that as much as I love Jonathan LaPaglia, anything he was doing in Australian Survivor 2016 was, above surface level. So it's been an enjoyment so far. Nothing that has necessarily stuck out in a negative way. Even something like Bounty versus Baron, which is just generally a twist that I abhor. Going back to obviously the first Survivor Fiji with the haves versus have-nots, it just seems like such a bad twist on paper that we know Australian Survivor loves to create rivalry. So I guess this is a natural way to do it, of like, they have everything, these people have nothing. To which I say, like, look around at the society that we live in. Do we really need to promote this theme even further? Do we need to create class warfare on Survivor when we seek to escape from all that going on in the real world? But for what it's worth, whether it's balancing the tribes, whether it's just the way things have rolled out, we're 2-2 at this point. Bounty has won 2, Baron has won 2. I did think of something, Shannon, that might be a little too cute, but could be a fun way to maybe improve the twist. So maybe it's already been improved due to the fact that Baron has fire and has brought, 4 items back to help even the odds a little bit.
Well, what is it?
What if all of Bounty and Baron always bring their stuff to every challenge, and whoever wins the immunity challenge always wins the Bounty camp?
But that doesn't feel necessary. Like that, I mean, that would, if that was necessary, the disparity would be so big that you're trying to win it every time, in which case Bounty would just keep winning and it would become the self-perpetuating cycle and it would be incredibly frustrating. Like the new era is basically Bounty Baron. Every disaster tribe is Baron. They don't have supplies. This is what we see happening. But this Bounty Baron twist was more in name, and I'm saying it from my couch, but the Baron tribe have already caught up. Like, what did Bounty win? A shelter? Well, Baron have tarp. They won food. Baron won more food. They won fire, and we're equal with that too. Like, they've suffered, but then they also could sit people out of like the challenges. So we're 2 episodes in. We've had a great come from behind 1 episode arc of Baron winning. And I think we're even, unless I like really don't understand like what constructing the shelter or just maybe the effort of that. But as I said, they wanted to do that. Like some of that is bonding.
Don't worry, Shannon. They had Dawn leading the charge, so that really got them, head to head by the end of episode 2.
Yeah, exactly. Thank God for Don. He used his own boundary.
Thank God Don didn't scramble after the challenge and instead focused on that shelter to really make sure they're neck and neck.
I love Don now, by the way. Like, my heart is open to Don. It was the one moment where they said, who should we go for? And Don was like, you should do me. And it was so self-aware and sweet and earnest that I was like, it turned me around on Don in the space of like 15 seconds. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it is that confessional of Johnson, another great montage of Johnson narrating, ironically enough, Don's own narration and like the things that they did he does that specifically annoys everybody. That was like, okay, this is a little bit of like an over the top character who's a little out of the loop, who will call that out at tribal council. So he exists as sort of a different character type than a lot of people on this season, which is always fun to have. I think, in a game like Survivor, that even especially in this time period of Australian Survivor, where people are so hyper gamey to the point where you have people being like, let's go after those who aren't doing anything after 5 days in this 45-day game. That here's Don being like, all right, I know that we all want to make sure we're not the first voted out, but can I ask for like 5 volunteers to help me on the shelter really quick?
Yeah, but anyway, on Bounty and Baron, I'm not going to come here and insult the production decisions on a season where I'm 2 episodes in and every single person's gone to tribal council. You rarely ever see it in the US. I mean, you couldn't. 2 episodes in, you physically couldn't. And in 3 episodes, you're probably not going to see it either. So it's even enough, but it still has the name and it still has the rivalry, and they just really needed names, and they've already had the arc. Like, for me, this is now settled. They are Bounty and Baron in name alone. So I think the production decisions have been really good. I think David is doing well. It's interesting that now the season has aired since I last podcasted. The first episode has aired and people are reacting, obviously, to David. But again, like for me, like this was his second tribal council, and because it's 2026, it was a live tribal council. I think he handled it well. I think that's mostly the dynamics of trying to see that he can handle everyone and kind of keep track of everything without giving things away, which we do know kind of was like an early Australian Survivor issue, more than like that's my issue. But it's funny because like, I don't want to like dismiss the role of host of Survivor as someone who wants to host and has hosted things before. I hope it's a skill, but like, and maybe they make it look easy, but at the end of the day, it's like the bar, it's not that it's low, but it's like, there's not a lot really to do. Production should really be leading this. Like Jeff as a host alone is near a cartoon character often. And even that, I feel I barely talk about compared to production twists, casting. And there are other parts of what Jeff is doing, even the way that he, conducts tribal council. But to me, that's more Jeff as a producer. Though that approach to tribal council is not what the host would decide. It's not what David as the host would decide, and I don't think it's what JLP as the host would decide because they're not in that like production camp. So I don't know. I'm seeing people being like, I can't do it, and I'm like, if that's what the heart wants, sure. But for me, like the game goes on. So
that's the thing.
yeah.
Is like if you're hanging it all on the host, maybe like those blocks Brooke was trying to put out, it's going to fall out quickly, but also like maybe a little bit of confirmation bias going on for some people's preconceived notion. Regardless, I think I think he's fine. I think you bring up a good point that, this is the second tribal council this man is doing as a host, and Mark decides to just crack everything wide open. I think he did a good job being like, all right, let's try to talk to other people that are not standing up whispering, because I'm sure in his head it was like that duck, right? That on the top, he's just trying to maintain that cool persona, but underneath, he's like, what the F am I doing right now?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, what did you think of what Mark did here? Because it was an entertaining tribal council before people stood up. Because Tez actually originally was bringing the heat, and Kat was bringing a lot of the heat.
I loved
and then
it.
Mark stood up. So there's a lot going on.
I was like going from, a small sterno to like an oven to like a pizza oven in terms of temperature, which is so much fun, especially for a first tribe's tribal council, right? Where it's like, again, the vast majority of them have not done this before. I guess more of them have done reality TV than you might think, which we'll certainly get into.
Well,
but
it didn't help.
It didn't help.
Yeah.
Most of them. But I really enjoyed this. And God, I love Mark so much. He is a fantastic confessionalist. Obviously, this is a man who knows how to drive a narrative. He's been around the block a couple times with continually talking about the ghosts that are haunting the jungle of Samoa. This man's going full like Egon Spengler on us, talking about the spirits that are inhabiting his mind. And I will say, overall, I wouldn't say it's not really spoiling my Chizzy points because I feel like our hand's a little forced in this episode. I thought it was a good move. I think of Kat versus Johnson. From what we are seeing, I think that if Mark is specifically looking to take out the more unknown, and it's weird to say unknown because he has Kat's game pretty much clocked, considering that he saw Traitors. But I do think
got that just in time on the podcast last night.
I know, which is like I guess we should not have underestimated the fact that like Mark. It's not even saying Mark did his research. Like Mark is
he
a
was
reality
on the podcast as well, so we know.
Yeah, he's also a reality TV junkie. So like, of course he watched Big Brother 2022. Of course he watched Traitors New Zealand. Like he is someone who loves the genre and happens to be able to participate in it as well. And so I feel like from his perspective, it's a choice we see all the time of like, okay, here is somebody who is pretty much sinking his game and other people are doing it for him, as we see at Tribal Council, where it's not just Kat, but Keely and Dawn being like, yeah, what the hell, Johnson? Versus, okay, here's somebody that can slip through the cracks and is also trying to mount something against my number one ally. And Mark has this really fierce ride or die mentality that he is going into this season with. I think given that credo and given that sort of binary decision making, it's something that makes sense to me.
Well, I'm happy for him to go for Kat over Johnson. Like firstly, I admire the reads. I admire the position on the decision to get up and take Kat out over Johnson. For me, I don't know that I think the juice was worth the squeeze because Kat, there are reasons to take her out, as you've spoken to. I think the fact that she's throwing out Faith is obviously very, very bad. But she couldn't get Faith off the ground, So like, if they're at the beach and he has time to do either, do Kat. I kind of think that they're both Kat and Johnson are liabilities, but also not hugely threatening. Johnson has a couple of numbers that Kat doesn't seem to have. I mean, they are all about to turn around and vote Kat out. So she doesn't have a lot of power. She's never gotten any traction, but she's being an irritant. I totally understand why you'd want her out if you're at the beach. Yeah, Johnson has a couple of numbers, also not getting a lot of traction, but like, I guess that could be dangerous in its own ways. But like, again, they're both kind of like low threat levels to me who are being annoying. Ben with Johnson mentions Keely, which isn't great. So like, your allies' names are out there. They're both, well, I guess the one thing is like Johnson is trying much more to work with Mark. and Kat is actively working against, she says, Faith and Mark to go for Faith. That is a big disparity, I understand, and that could tip Kat, but it doesn't tip it for me at Tribal Council. Like, these are disparities, again, for people who aren't going to be able to shake what Mark has right now, clearly, because how much control he has. But both things, keep an eye on it for sure. But at Tribal Council, look at the capital that he gives up to choose Kat over Johnson. Even if I would be leading Kat earlier in the day, I felt like that door had closed, because to take out Kat, he fully puts his hand up. He's fully in the spotlight. He's already a returnee. It's day 5 of 45. That alone for me is scary. And the second thing I find really scary is he really showed his invisible hand here, where he spoke to Keely, and then Keely spoke to Faith and Brooke. Like, that is the core group. He had to turn Tez away. Blanche doesn't stand up, so she ends up just still on the Sally vote. Like, it could have been more cohesive. It could have been more subtle. It became like a sledgehammer. And even though it got out probably a better target, I don't know that the disparity between those targets was enough for me to want to stand up and do it there publicly in front of David.
I'm trying to remember the Tribal Council seating chart. Was Mark... so Mark was next to Brooke, and Caleb was in front of him. Could he have just, whispered down the line? I mean, look, it still is not the most conspicuous thing and could be easily clocked, but maybe the big show of getting up and doing it. Now, again, maybe this is Mark feeling like the benefits outweigh the cost of him being like, yeah, I mean, he does say on the way out, like, oh yeah, this put a big target on me, but maybe he thought, like, this is making a bigger show to the people that I am locked in with. And again, it's more so declaring this numbers game of him being like, okay, these are the people I am riding with now. Look what I was able to do for you. I got up and stopped Tribal Council to make sure that we were all a united front, as opposed to, again, 7 people were up whispering. There were 5 people seated and not necessarily engaged with, and those 5 people were the ones that were left out of the vote at the end of the day. So maybe Mark feels like building that coalition within the fires of Tribal Council, and also being able to command the conversation too, because again, this is such a new concept for so many people, not just live Tribal Councils, but Tribal Council in general, that he's like, okay, here's what we are going to do. I do find it so interesting that I think they're really setting up, especially in the next time on, this narrative of Mark and Harry as these are the 2 quote unquote strategists who are trying to take control of the tribe. It is 2 completely different approaches, right? Where you look at Harry with the Daniel vote, he's like, I don't know if I agree with this, but I'll go with whatever as long as it's not me. And then you have Mark being like, nope, I built the social capital. Now I'm going to get what I want. Yeah, I think it's something that could obviously put him out in front as we see Johnson going after him the next time around. But I do feel like maybe this plays into more so what Mark wants to do this time around. And he feels like if he sat idly back, that he could start the slow roll towards having another ghost in that graveyard.
Well, that's not anything, as much as he says it in confessional and at Tribal Council, that's not a reason to make decisions. My concern is yesterday, I said, Cameron was that was too aggressive to want to go for Jackson as an example. And to me as well is really aggressive, especially because Mark is it's already going well, he's set up so well. I don't know why it has to be showed. I kind of feel like you have Kat, who's more against you, who can maybe slip under the radar more, but clearly has no capital, nothing has gained traction. She's about to be voted out by your whole group. Either you vote her out, you've managed to get that on the beach and you vote her out, or you have her in your sights. Surely for the future, as fodder, you just go back and it's we ran out of time, but we shouldn't have taken out Kat. Then there's Johnson. Johnson has a couple of allies, but again, everyone's working against him. If you vote him out now, or if Kat went, you'd have him in your sights. It's not so simple to be they'll definitely go. I understand that feels premature and maybe underestimating it, but I think he's set up well enough that as long as he just kind of has this group, the most important thing was he has that group of girls, and then he's picked up these other numbers and he's saved Tez and Dawn and Caleb's in it and Blanche TBD, but I think he just didn't stand up. But you have a group. I think just kind of do that without it being obvious. Or if it is obvious to them already, that's its own concern. But as much as you've clarified that, I just don't know that I think that Kat was worth it. So is it it's worth it enough for Kat because she's actively targeting Faith, and she said in confessional Mark's name with Faith, compared to like a very like kind of cursory Keely's not doing a lot from Ben. Okay, is that enough of a difference? For me, no. Is it big movitis? Is it like I want control to have control? Like I have to criticize that 5 days in. Again, I respect that he could get it done. I don't like, sometimes I'm like, you're doing too much this early in the game.
I also like that you said, Johnson has a couple people on his side when, listen, we'll have a lot of consternation against Kat. She was able to convince one of Johnson's tightest allies, seemingly, to vote against him.
Well, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying is like Kat, who everyone just voted for. So how much of a worry was she gonna be? Like, was she worth it when we could turn it that quickly? Only Brooke was like somewhat like Kat, not immediately. And then Johnson, like, how much worry is he gonna be? Like, he had 2 close allies, and one of them just like desperately turned and like jumped off the sinking ship. So like, you have it on lock. You don't need to be doing this much. Like, this is what I'm saying. It's like you're in a better position than this warranted, I think.
What do you think about? I mean, listen, we'll get into a lot with what Johnson's trying to do. I'm intrigued to find out how much people know about Johnson, because we have Johnson's obviously talking about Big Brother to us. Mark's talking about Big Brother.
No, they seem to all know about Big Brother.
Yeah, which is weird because Johnson in his preseason promo stuff was very adamant about like, I'm not going to tell anyone that I was on Big Brother. So I feel like, did we just
Tez probably was like, weren't you on Big Brother? And he was like, probably like, I'm going to try vote for you next, like this week. And then eventually Tez was coming for him at Tribal Council. So maybe that's what set up that drama.
Yeah, I just kind of wish we saw that, because I think that would also be a fantastic display of kind of like this little doof edit we're getting from Johnson's perspective, where he's not nearly as cool hand Luke as we think that he is. Of like, he's going to come in being like, I have this big secret that no one's going to know about. Then he hits the beach like, yeah, you're from Big Brother. Right. And then just completely blows up in his face. I think that'd be such a great representation of Johnson's 5 days of the game so far.
Well, it might have been kind of silly to try and keep it a secret when you were on national television 4 years ago and it was a reality show. Like, I know they cast recruits, but damn, you think one person would have he got to the final 3. Like, the Cat thing at least was in a different country and traders are small, and that still didn't work. I kind of think if the secret you're trying to hide has been on national TV in the last few years, that's not a secret. That's between you and how many people are watching Big Brother? Like a couple of million, like maybe not million, like at least hundreds of thousands. Like, that's not between you and God anymore.
I mean,
that was on television.
Can you say that? But if we're going on the traitors bandwagon, the astounding fact that people in the U.S. did not know how close Johnny Weir and Tara Lipinski are just shows the spheres that people choose to live in. The monoculture is dead, Shannon. People may not necessarily know what a Big Brother is, let alone they might be like, who are you a Big Brother to, Johnson?
Well, at this point, it's like Mark might as well say he's not a returnee. Like, who was the second returnee on this tribe? Like, he was on a reality show more recently than Brooke was. I think maybe you tell it. And also, I think some people knew about, like, I think Rob tweeted that he knew about Tara and Johnny. There's no way that, anyway, there's no way that everyone didn't know. I kind of think it's like it's a funny thing to keep a secret. It's like how everyone tries to, like, keep their profession a secret, but, like, their profession is not, like, just a lawyer, but, like, I don't know, one of the many lawyers that have a legal TV show about them. But then, I mean, look, it does speak to where Johnson has been, it's just been so bad. I don't know where to start with Kat or Johnson, just having like a terrible off between each other. I want to start with Kat because the second Kat started doing stuff, I was like, I don't know if it's the edit, but you're going home. I'm sorry, Kat, like it's done.
Was it maybe Shannon the umpteenth time she said, here's a plan that I could easily move forward with, but I will actively choose not to do that plan and give myself the incredibly harder path to get through to the next vote. It may have been that moment that I'm like, yeah, I think you may be going home here, Kat. You do not have one life, let alone 9.
Obviously, it was meant to be between Johnson and Kat, but at like no point but I don't know, like, had we seen stuff of like Johnson and then like that stuff? I don't know if it seeps into me. I try not to pay attention to it. Kat did so much here that was so questionable. Like, all the lies were terrible. It's actually interesting because I was just introducing Survivor to a friend of mine and we were watching Survivor Cagayan. And she was like, why did Sarah just believe Tony when he like made up a conversation between like Cliff and Lindsay? I'm like, I feel like people often, like, rarely ever just make up a lie, like make up a conversation. It's like different to being like, are you voting for me? No. To like, this whole different thing happened. Because like, it might be verifiable. Is it believable? Is it true to that person? It works on Sarah. But this lie that she takes to Brooke, who seemingly likes Kat, is like Faith is going against the returnees. It's like, well, that is a terrible lie. Like, you're not reading that situation. You don't have a good enough read to manipulate that situation in your lie. There's no way Marks. It was like immediately verifiable that Faith is like so closely working with the returnees. And then she goes to Tez.
Yeah.
And she's like, they just like Johnson and Ben just threw out your name, but I think we should go for Faith. It's like, actually, you've just explained to Tez what is actually happening, which is that they're saving Don and Tez. Like, that's the reason to keep Faith and be actually very grateful to Faith.
I was so amazingly mystified as to why she decided this. I mean, this actually does make sense from a trader's perspective, right? Which is less about maybe building a group consensus and more so going to individual people and being very evidence based, right? Being like, okay, this is a thing and this is why you should vote for me on this thing, rather than like, all right, if we have this person, this person, this person, then we're all going to vote together and we're going to get Faith out. That's why she does kind of basically, again, purposely tie her hands behind her back here by going around to Sally and being like, Faith is putting your name out, going to Tez and saying, Johnson and Ben said your name, but that's a ruse because Faith's the one that we should actually go after. And then,
I never understood that. Like, why? And then why even bring up the other group? Like, if anything, I'd be like, wait, what did Johnson and Ben say? Like, even more so am I now like against that group.
Maybe she's trying to preemptively be like, you're going to hear a lot of things about Johnson and Ben. I want you to know that's all a lie. It's
not a lie
for the
she
fire.
Said it was true. They said your name, which was accurate, but don't go for them. But I want to because they said my name.
And also I do find it interesting, and when you get the chance to talk with Kat, I'd love to hear her perspective on this, that like my assumption would be, now maybe as we talk about with like Harry and Simon's supposedly secret alliance, maybe these people are blankly assuming that these returnees can't stand each other and want to throw the other under the bus. But like, if I'm going to Brooke, I probably have a working assumption that she is in leagues with Mark. And then if apparently she assumes that Faith is pretty close with Mark, to then go to Brooke and be like, yeah, by the way, the friend of your friend is throwing your name out.
No, not your name. Returnees. One of whom is Mark.
Yeah, it's to say it's too cute by half would be an understatement. It's like too cute by like 5 times over. And again, if you talk about big move-itis with Mark, it was much more of a virulent case with Kat, where even her final words, she's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that, but I didn't come to Survivor to play things easy. Now, look, let me just all say it, like, as a blanket statement here. I'm loving it from a good TV perspective because it's given us stuff to talk about. It's a great lesson plan as to what to not do in Survivor. But I have been, like many people, enraptured by a lot of what's been going on with the recent Winter Olympics. Maybe I just have like a speed skating analogy in my head, Shannon, a la Steve Bradbury, of like, people, I think, try to play Australian Survivor in particular like it's like a 500-meter race where it's like, well, the first turn matters the most. You need to get off to a good start, otherwise you're sunk. When it's much more a 1,500-meter race. It's much more of a, okay, listen, you just hang with the group early on, and then after like lap 2 or 3, that's when you start breaking out. All you need to do right now is not get out too far ahead and just stay with the club. That's how you need to play. And Kat, for some particular reason, and again, I don't know, like, it does seem like kind of purposely self-destructive talk, where I don't know if she's like, and tonight I'm taking charge of this game. It honestly, Shannon, most of the philosophies she's espousing in her confessionals are kind of like, I'm doing this for shits and giggles. She literally says like, oh, well, I couldn't get Faith to move. I want to turn things on Johnson, but that's kind of boring. What? Why are you using that as a piece of logic? And it's also just because I thought she was going to mean that to say like, okay, but now I'm going to try to turn things on Tribal Council, when more so she's just like, yeah, it's on Johnson and it's boring. And I guess the reason I'll make things less boring is just by really roasting Johnson at Tribal Council.
Yeah, I think why I'm so anti people being aggressive at this point, unless they need to. If you're on the bottom, I mean, at the point where they were like standing up, I can't believe Kat and Johnson just didn't stand up at that point to be in the conversation.
Yeah, why? Or even like talk block them, right? Just like get in those conversations and being like, 100%. Hey, what's everybody talking about?
Yeah, not me, right? Yeah, especially because maybe this is what made Kat more dangerous to Mark, but like Kat wasn't on the outs. Like Johnson had made himself on the out socially in a way that Kat hadn't. Now, again, she wasn't socially integrated enough to the point where she wasn't then going to be voted out by this majority in the space of one tribal council. So I don't think that she had enough traction in social capital to make this work. But it kind of felt like if she just did nothing, that would be okay. And like, look, I mean, they were comparing it less to speed skating and more to like horse racing. I feel like we were getting a lot of that. But I do think what's interesting about, I don't know what race this is, but like Australian Survivor is the type of game where I don't know that you can win it now, but I know that you can lose it, and I'm watching people do it every day. And that is different to US Survivor.
Yeah.
Like you can't win the game at the beginning, but it's more desperate. Like you can do nothing and then passively be taken out. If you're on a disaster tribe, especially or whatever, in these tiny little tribes, if you do nothing, the wave might just come for you. You might have to like actively fight against it a little bit more. Whereas like Australian Survivor, in a way that I think is interesting TV, has given you the gift of space, given me the gift of watching people play with space. Like Kat could lose. You can even lose an ally and be okay. It's really tough in these tiny tribes in US Survivor to even lose an ally or two, and now you're and the game is gone. So I think you can more passively lose in early US Survivor, and I think you have to kind of more actively lose here in Australian Survivor, because like Kat has options, you know, like if Johnson goes, who I mean, I don't think was like he wasn't working against her, but like Johnson was doing the easy thing against Dawn. So if Johnson goes, she's not in his core group, work against that Johnson group a little bit, let that happen, and then there's still space. Does that mean that you're just at the bottom of Mark and his core group? Not necessarily. Not if you pick up Don and Tez, and like there's this, I mean, a hierarchy that was clear enough to be painted to tribal council. Like not if you pick up the last of Sally and Blanche, and like there are so many numbers, and there's going to be a swap. Like there's genuine space here where I don't think you ever have to like really, like, unless you're the target, and again, I think they should have stood up, but I don't think you ever have to like play out of your skin to do something so aggressive to save the situation. Whereas I think in US Survivor, especially like newer US Survivor, it's much more likely that if you do nothing and let something happen, actually time will pass you by in a way that now it is too late. So I don't know. I haven't seen the aggression be worth it at any point. I don't think.
I mean, I think like maybe Kirby, but Kirby, as always with every element of Survivor, is the exception rather than the rule, right? Like we at the time we were
Kirby,
like,
that was awful.
Yeah, we were like, why is she doing this?
Yes.
How can she possibly get away with this? I also have to imagine
Kirby was saved by space.
Yeah,
and maybe that's the thing. But like you know, Johnson could be swapped out of this position right now, but that doesn't mean that you should make it harder for yourself, I don't think.
I also feel like, and maybe this is the narrative tricking me, like, is some of this at least a little bit baked in PTSD from Traitors? And this is why we said in the preseason, right? Like Traitors and Survivor are two very different types of fruit, because like she's saying confessional, like, you know, I got taken out last, so it's taught me that I need to gun for big players in the beginning, when it's like, that's not what
that's Traitors, very irritating.
That's also that's not what Traitors is. You know, Traitors is not a thing of like, we got to go for the big guns in the beginning because they're the ones that are traitors. Like that's often really not the case. Maybe one of them is like doing too much at the very beginning, but oftentimes it becomes a game at the end of like, okay, who's doing the least? Who's doing the most behind the scenes? So, I mean, even just trying to follow Kat's train of thought was impossible. It's like a station at Frankfurt where you're just trying to navigate what train to get on. Where, okay, so she gets this plan from Mark that's Johnson, and she sours on it. She goes to Ben and Johnson, and Blanche is there too. And Johnson says, okay, it's Ben. And then Kat says something pretty well, which is like, oh, I thought you were strategic. Like she's like low-key, like kind of trying to nag Johnson by being like, oh wait,
for a strategic player like you.
Oh, I thought you played Big Brother. You actually want to go for an easy target like that. And then that pushes Ben and Johnson to throw out Tez and Keely's name, which is a bad thing. But like if I'm Johnson and I get called out about this at Tribal Council, first off, I would not respond the way he does. We'll certainly get to that sort of kettle of fish in a little bit. But I would respond by being like, Kat, you were like fishing information out of me. Like the tone I got from that conversation personally was her coming forward and being like, yeah, I know it's Dom, but like, what are other names you would say? Oh, those? Okay, I'll be right back for no particular reason. Then she starts deciding to spread out all these different names and all these different perspectives. And then it seems like she has this conversation with Mark. Now, maybe the ship has sailed at this point and she decides, okay, I wasn't able to get any traction on it. But it seems like from our perspective, Mark clocks her game, outright mentions one of her rivals on her season, and she's like, oh no, I'm not as slick as I thought I would be. Let me go back to Johnson. Yeah, let me also simultaneously really put myself out in front by torching Johnson in the process. It is mystifying and astounding to me what happened to this woman who, nary but like 12 hours beforehand, was telling us, all right, so my goal is to be as non-threatening as possible. I really want to be underestimated and being under the radar. Fantastic in concept, incredibly poor in execution, apparently.
I was like, great, yeah, we've met you. Let's Kaylin style revisit this in like 7 episodes. Not tonight. What is that like? And the thing as well, it's like, I think so much of this is just big move itis, because I know the producers are there, like, do the big move. And I think that's why a lot of them are doing these things that I disagree with, because if I were there, I'd be like, don't do the big move. They'd be like, you're fired as a producer. I'd be like, actually, I just snuck onto set, and then security would chase me. But that's what I want to do. I want to be their counter, being like, don't make the big move on day 2. You'll be fine. But I know they're doing it with the traders. That's what you said. It's like, well, I need my redemption from the traders, from Big Brother. It's annoying enough when people do that from Survivor, because it's often untrue. Like, firstly, it's a whole different season with all different players. Like, you can't compare it. People have to be reading what they did wrong, unless it's like a fatal flaw. It's probably actually not even that functional.
Yeah, again, even Mark's prevailing narrative of like, oh, I didn't protect my allies enough. That wasn't the problem, Mark. The problem was that, like, you were honestly, with Viola, you were protecting her too much, and Caroline got pissed off and turned things on her.
Yeah, well, firstly, that wasn't even really what happened. It's a narrative, sure, but yeah, as you said, like, if anything, you should have the actual fatal flaw there is, like, you should have been more flexible and just been like, well, I'm middle-aged mafia till I die.
Yeah.
And even then, that's not why you, like, lost the game. Like, that's not, like, the redemption you need. You still made it to, like, the penultimate day. And this is even worse, though, when it's on a different show. Traders has very little in common with Survivor. Really. It's a completely different format. And there's no translatable real thing here. But like, she's doing that because of production. I think maybe it is, like, big move idols on day 5.
Yeah.
And it is funny, because then it does cause her to triple down on Johnson. So then she's coming for him in tribal council, which
is also very, again, like, her behavior was really reminiscent of a round table for me. When it's like, this is the one person I'm voting for, and I gotta convince everybody else to do it, right? So, like, then she decides to bring up this information in the moment. I don't think she was necessarily going. I mean, I guess she did tell Tez that Johnson was throwing his name out, but, like, again, this just felt very roundtable coded to me for her to come in and be like, I'd like to say something. I'm not involved in this, but here's something that I heard. And again, it goes to show why this doesn't necessarily work at a time where, unlike traders, you can get up from the round table and start whispering to people like, what the hell's going on with Kat right now?
Yeah, I really love that analogy. I mean, she put herself in the position where she felt like she was like, I was nowhere to be seen. Johnson was such an easy vote. He did it to himself. And now maybe it's the competition. And now I've got to, like, force the issue, which actually, ironically, it was so unfortunate that she was even in that position, that she'd put herself in that position where that were true. It also seemed to have the opposite effect, or if Mark was, like, already thinking that, but maybe it's just like, what is she going to do next? What happened to you? Are you okay? So that was so interesting. And it's so unfortunate for her. Like, she's fighting against this group, and then everyone not in that group, it's like, votes her out of the game. Like, the people not. So how much traction could she have had if that's how the night goes? If this could all happen in the space of a day, I don't think it was worth getting up to take her out. I think that's kind of where I am with it. But I actually think, I was thinking long and hard about, like, what do you do if you're Johnson in this situation, right? Because it reminded me not of Traders, but the game that Traders is inspired by, and in some ways kind of bastardizes, which is Mafia or Werewolf. And, like, how many Saturday nights in high school did I, stay up late playing Werewolf and accusing someone else of being, just claiming I'm the seer instead of a werewolf. And then the real seer comes forward and you're like, no, you're not the seer. And then you're in this back and forth, and the game is lost at that point. Let me tell you, 16-year-old me knew the game is done. Go to sleep. It's 2 a.m., but I didn't. But that's kind of what this is like. So then you, like, accuse. I'm like, part of me was like, damn it, Johnson, fight! Don't you say thank you for ringing, thank you for the notice. Like,
that's the thing. Is the one thing you don't respond with is, I'm so glad you brought that up. Why are you so glad that she brought that up?
Talk about it at the round table.
Like, just, I think it's a great microcosm of, I think, the way Johnson has been presented to us so far, which is, like, transparently transactional. which is this idea of like, oh, I really want to work with you. Do you? Are you just selling me a bill of goods at this point? Like, I don't think we got this, but I have to imagine that a lot of these people that he had these individual conversations with are comparing notes. I think it's incorrect to perhaps disparage some of these people like a Keely, like a Tez for not playing the game when there's probably some stuff where they are talking, being like, yeah, what did Johnson say to you? Like, it was just he was probably scrambling at this point. And again, Big Brother is not necessarily a game where you are put on the spot in the moment. If it's the voting is anything akin to what Big Brother US voting is, like you're kind of low key sequestered. You're not allowed to talk during sort of the voting proceedings. And so maybe he was just sort of caught off guard, but just a really like used car salesman response to it, right? I'm like, maybe just because they recently re-aired the South Pacific finale on this Road to 50 thing. Like, I think of Albert at the final tribal council of Survivor South Pacific when Jim Rice is like, Albert, I'm asking you a question. If you respond complimenting any of these finalists, I'm going to take away, any possibility of voting for you. And Albert says, first off, great question. Absolutely love that. It's like, you are not getting the point whatsoever. And again, I think that's maybe one of the reasons why, even if you disagree, Mark kept Johnson in, is because at the beginning of the episode, he felt threatened by Johnson, that he felt like, oh, Johnson's trying to do what I'm doing, except worse. Now we know that's the case, but it is not working whatsoever. That Johnson's attempt at scrambling is him not even denying the accusation by him just being like, yeah, you know what? I'm really glad you brought that up. We need to discuss that.
I mean, like, I don't disagree. Johnson's been so defanged that, again, Sally is going to turn on him, despite the fact that Ben has cacti speedos, or budgie smugglers, I should say, as an Australian. Yeah. Which the context of that Sally works at a cacti nursery was never given to the audience, which I love.
Yeah,
let them really, come to the conclusion.
You really had to A to see that to be like, it's like the Brooke and Lyndall connection, right? Like you really had to do your homework this season.
Well, that's why we're here. And
just an incredible line from her, right? Of like, I got this sign that I had to follow the cacti, and now it's on your gonads. Yeah. Never, but I would not think I'd hear the word gonads sincerely said in the year of our Lord, Jeff 2026, but it makes me so happy to be surprised.
And that's like the last place you want a cacti, I imagine. Yeah, I doubt it's like a textural garment, but if it were, nightmare. So this is why we're here to give the information about the cacti and maybe some other stuff. But anyway, I think Johnson has been defagged, but I also think Kat just got voted. Like Kat as well at this point has been defagged. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't disagree that Johnson's not really a worry. I just don't think Kat's enough of a worry above him to necessitate this. But I was thinking about, so what do you do here? Do you deny it that you brought up Tez? The Keely thing is really more unfortunate than Tez, especially because it seemed also verifiably true. I mean, none of it seemed shocking. She was like, we have not spoken. So that's more of the issue. So actually at first I was like, no, fight. Say, no, you're the seer, Kat. Like, no, I'm the seer. You're the werewolf, whatever. Anyway, but no. I don't know. Like the issue is like, firstly, would be shocking because he was actually trying to work with Kat. And you can't even say like, well, she's just scrambling because she's on the bottom, because she wasn't. Nope. Especially like from Johnson's perspective, like they're just voting for Don. So that would be a very confusing place to be in the moment. And he also he didn't handle it well. He definitely had like spinning wheel of doom just like loading in his face. But the more I thought of it, and I did think like deny it, then I was like, I don't know. I think I probably don't deny it. Like, you can be vague. It's like, well, we've all had conversations. But, like, in his mind, Tez is on the bottom and irrelevant and about to get some votes. So, like, let's see where it goes. Keely, it is unfortunate, but she seems to know they don't have a good relationship. And at the point where, like, Tez is verifiable, Keely's verifiable, he said it to so many people, it was pretty easy to probably, actually confirm. So I don't know that I would be out there just like denying it for the sake of denying it. I don't know that I would have phrased it the way that he did. I think it makes it really tough because people often don't do this. And for the record, if I was Tez's ally, I wouldn't like this either.
Yeah, he opens tribal council just going from 0 to 60
to the round table. Like, I mean, and apparently because it's such a different kind of side of his personality, it's certainly different from the edit we've seen of him. We didn't get a lot of him.
Non-existent, yeah.
Exactly. And then we got this, and I feel like for me as an ally, I'd be like, well, why do this? Like, we have split numbers anyway, but like, you don't need to come for them. We're about to vote them out. Like, we're about to win. Give it 20 minutes, and then that will be your justice.
I mean, it's
they
one of
think
these
they're
things,
getting
right?
you
That
and
it's
you're
like,
getting
I'm
them.
not going to wait until you're dead to tell you off. I'm going to stay on your deathbed all the times that you've wronged me. Maybe try to like get, your pound of flesh out of him.
Do
but
it in the voting confessional and not really loud like Cat. Say it quietly in the voting confessional, and then the votes will be read by David, and he will tell Johnson all the things you're saying. He'll work that out as he's walking down the path. Like, but then it's like, but how can his allies be mad at him? Because then Mark's standing up. You know, like how can you? Like, you needed to be more subtle. It's like none of us are subtle. So I mean, I don't think that was great either. But look, wonderful television. No notes on the TV. Everyone was bringing it. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think like Johnson. I wouldn't say outright remorseful because, as you mentioned, you have Tez mentioning something, and then you have Keeley and Dawn both basically being like, "Yeah, why did you not have conversations with us?" I mean, I think the response could be like, "I don't know, have you had conversations with literally everyone on this beach except for me?" Like, it's a two-way street, people. But like, you could be kind of repentant in that moment and be like, yeah, you know what? It was wrong of me to shut you out. Like, I think if I make my way back to the beach, like we can have a larger conversation about this. It's only 5 days in. I do want to get to know you, which again, I think he was like kind of showing signs of, but as we talked about before, it's always about intention with some of these things, not the actual things that you say. And the way he was just coming across to me of being so schmaltzy with like, yeah, Kat, I'm really excited that you brought that topic up at this meeting because this is something that I really wanted to circle back to.
Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate that. It just it served as me as a bit of confirmation bias from like a Don and Keeley perspective as like, oh, this guy's just so full of it. And I, even though we're getting a tease next time of like, oh my God, Johnson's mounting this coup. I don't know. I could be greatly surprised. I very much doubt that this is happening, considering that if he's trying to go up against the guy who, whether we agree or not, stood up to literally save one of his allies and from his perspective and turn the vote against somebody else versus Johnson, who's apparently either been telling everyone the same thing or actively not talking to people. He really does not have a leg to stand on here. I think if Barron goes back to tribal council, maybe things could shift last minute again and Johnson just becomes a perennial smokescreen for someone like Mark, but he has to be the odds-on favorite to get booted here, which would be very interesting in that in a season that has 4 returnees and 2 people with previous reality TV experience, if we lose both of them out of the first 3 votes, that would be unbelievable.
Well, you kind of have to wonder what was happening in those seasons because, like, we've spoken through Kat Johnson, like, he was only trying to vote out Dawn. I think that's the craziest thing about that. Is like last night, I said, wow, I'm surprised this wasn't like I thought it was a Dawn boot, like a really obvious Dawn boot early on in the episode. I thought Barron would lose the challenge. Like the Daniel boot, it kind of felt like it spoke for itself. And like I actually praised Lottie for taking out Daniel, and even she hit that too hard because I really think because Daniel probably was such an intuitive vote. Again, the person most responsible for voting out Daniel was Daniel. And like if you wanted Dawn out of the game, much like I've said many times tonight, I think he just needed to do nothing. Like I think that the way that people were reacting to Dawn, even though he gets brought in, was probably true if no one else becomes more of an issue with like a really clear trio, by the way, that like they completely clocking those. So that's the issue as well, Ben.
Issue, yeah.
It was such a bad trio that it doesn't make it through the night, but yet it was still that clear. So that's like if there was something to be done, like there was nothing to be done. If they just let Dawn be, you know, he's doing like the things that are wrong that we've said are wrong for 25 years. Annoying people from a shelter perspective, like, let him do that. But instead, he like makes this clear group. Johnson, he piles it all on Dawn. He's throwing out other names. He's talking at people a lot. You know, I thought one of the interesting scenes that we saw was that, you know, Blanche is like, well, he's good in the challenges, and she seems to care about that. And he's like, who cares about? You know, he's like immediately like, no, and not listening to her at all. He's saying all the names. Like I feel like a lot of the premiere episode, we saw the Bounty Tribe be like, well, I'm going to give this name quietly and maybe someone else will say it. Johnson's like, I say the names, you know, like it was, he went so hard at a vote that should have been so easy. Like in his mind, they're doing a Don Tez split.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be like this.
I mean, it's
like
not
if that
even
was
a split,
the vote,
technically it's a split, but I think Johnson was expecting an 11-1 vote on Dawn with just him being told that it's Tez.
Yeah, we got something similar in the first episode when it was like, just let Don do that to himself. But it's then instead justice for Don. Redempt Don is happening. Don is
Uh-huh.
my favorite because I've turned around him, and it was funny because it looks so bad for Don because he is like, again, Don's doing all the stuff to himself. He immediately is like, Blanche and Ben will go on the reward. It seemed to be a pretty unilateral decision when like that's an important decision because there's often like a self-interested, like you need a lot of trust. At least it was like Blanche, who seems at least maybe like, I don't know, she didn't stand up. Maybe she's on the bottom of that big group, or maybe she's just kind of floating. But Ben, and he chooses Ben, who's like not with the majority. Like, I mean, he did well in the
Yeah,
challenge.
can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Can we talk about that segment? Because that was so much fun. First off, I love the Survivor Shop. I know this is not going to be the case, but like, I kind of would low key love it as like the place they went to every time. I know that we want to have more of a diversity in rewards, but I do kind of love this idea of here's just like a massive shop of things that you can get, and now people are being sent to go there. It's almost like a bit of an outpost exile situation. And then from that perspective, then you could offer more individualized rewards, right? Like you could offer an idol, you could offer an extra vote or something. And then it becomes a really fun scenario where, like the note implies, though does not get acted upon, like what happens at the Survivor Shop stays at the Survivor Shop. Maybe that would be the case with like the salt and vinegar chips, right? Of like, okay, maybe this is something the two of them could squirrel away and try to build allies Jericho style. But I actually think that was a fun choice by production that I don't think we're going to keep going back there. But I do think it's an interesting choice. As much as I'm sure they like to structure out what rewards happen when, I always love to encourage player choices within these games. And I think the ability to provide them, want to know what you're playing for? Hey, it's your choice. Whatever you want to do is a really fun thing that I think is able to describe a lot of characters and strategic choices just by providing them unlimited options.
Yeah, I mean, look, choice is always great. Unfortunately, the segment relied a lot on like, have they seen the Flint? Because they made like great choices. Like they had good options and they made good choices. Like it's hard to get like blood out of that stone when they don't choose something silly.
Yeah,
like,
but
I think there was a plant. When I was like,
there was a cactus. There was a cactus.
Imagine, I genuinely when I saw it, I was like, he might bring it back as like a mascot, and then you just beat him with it.
I mean, if Sally went, there's a non-zero chance she picks the cactus. Be like, this is our new Tribe mascot. I mean, I fell for it though when the two of them are walking down the beach, and the first thing you see is Ben carrying that giant ass fish. I literally head facepalm, and I'm like, oh my god, he actually picked the fish, despite the fact that Blanche brought up to his face, we cannot make this without fire. These certified dumbasses. And then I fell for it, and then Ben pulled, the Flint out there. Goes to show, especially with Australian Survivor editing, they're not necessarily going to show what the find is, perhaps obfuscate some details to build intrigue. But I mean, it was also, I think it was a fun character moment as well for those two, considering that we haven't necessarily seen a lot of them. I think people maybe clock that Ben would be more of a purple player going into the season because he doesn't seem necessarily the most strategically minded and is just a very nice guy. This guy's like a low-key goofball. Like, especially in his confessionals, he's hamming it up a little bit, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I think that, the show is pretty good at giving characters these moments. Like, it doesn't have to be in confessional. It can be, okay, well, two of you went on a reward, so there's a focus on you. Then you might remember, like, they were the two that couldn't see the Flint at the reward, like, or from Ben, you're probably thinking of the Speedos. Why am I now? Like, because I think more than we spoke about it more than we should have. Anyway, but then, like, even like Simon gets a moment. We all know Simon, but like Simon gets a challenge moment because he has that hero moment in the challenge, and you individualize it. Not only does it put pressure on the players, but and I think Australian Survivor is so good at doing that, and like it always usually creates like quite a bit of drama, but like, yeah, it gives a chance to get to know them. I mean, we got to know Simon a little bit more in how he was doing that challenge, and I thought it was a really great challenge that we haven't seen as much as well, climbing up to do that.
Let me just say, like, I somehow like Mandela effect myself every single Australian Survivor season, maybe because we only usually get one a year, that I forget just like how freaking good the challenges are, and like
we did get two last year.
Yeah, that's true. But then I look at the US challenges and I just kind of like always let out an exhale. Where like even things like rolling the big wagon wheels down the ramp as a final stage of the challenge. Yeah, we've had
two really good hero moments for Mark and Simon in the first two immunity challenges here. And I don't care about challenges, but I thought they were both great.
Yeah, but even like, again, just the sight of like building the word vertically and like I didn't even think about it at the time.
And like, he says we're back at Braun because they're spelling it wrong.
That was so good. Yeah, such a great callback. For those who don't know, They did an arch challenge in Brains versus Brawn where they had to spell out Brains versus Brawn, or I think they just had to spell out their tribe name maybe, and Brawn could not spell broad, which is the most fantastic on-brand thing that's maybe happened in Australian Survivor history. But yeah, it's just moments like that I'm like, this is just so unique and so fun, and like you said, provides great narrative opportunities as well. It doesn't need to be a puzzle every single time for a hero moment. It can be something as, I didn't even think about like having to climb the frame to put the things up there. I didn't even think one person had to do it. I thought it was going to be one of those things where like you get on people's backs to put the blocks up there. So to have this be a big moment for someone like Simon, and again, especially the narration he provides himself was so gold, and reminds me that like, yeah, the challenges on Australian Survivor, especially in the pre-merge, are pretty damn spectacular.
Yeah, because it is unique, you know, like it can be a puzzle, and it often is in the US. But this was something where again it spoke to Simon's like career. And last episode it spoke to Mark's like experience in
Career
the
as
game.
a getting the ball, getting the wheel rolling.
Yeah, I think it was giant balls in Titans v Rebels, but a similar
Yeah, that's
thing.
why I was
So
confused when he's like, I've done this before. I'm like, I've
I've never
remember
seen this. No,
this.
I think it was a giant balls, yeah. And so I think those have been great character moments. Like we get like pretty much nothing from Bounty in this episode, because again, if you lose reward and win immunity, like we're not going to hear from you, especially Australian Survivors. Like we'll get you when you lose immunity, like, you know, like, and it is obvious. Like, did I ever think that Bounty were going to Tribal Council? I'm like, we really haven't seen them at all. But also, I'm kind of enjoying the ride. I'm not really like overanalyzing it in the moment. I think all we got from Bounty was like Lottie v Harry. And it's funny because I gave Lottie 3 Chizzy points because I'm like, she kind of got a lot done, but she didn't do anything big. But it felt like she still did too much.
Yeah.
Not even compared to Johnson, who did way too much, but like she still did too much, even in clearly spearheading the intuitive Daniel vote. And that's kind of where we're at. And I'm fine with it. Like, I'm happy to like meet these new people at Baron.
Yep.
And I think across the board, like, I think we've learned about a lot of people, mainly because there's so many targets.
Yeah.
You're gonna learn about them when their names are said repeatedly. And this whole episode was like the gun pointing meme.
Oh,
it was like
so
Johnson
good.
pointing at Don, and then like Mark pointing at Johnson, and then like Kat pointing at Mark/Faith, but then like Mark turning it like back around.
Yeah, I mean, think about the fact that the vote was 7-2 to 2-1, and the 2 to 1. Like, I think one vote was thrown onto Sally as part of the split vote plan, but it wasn't.
Well, Blanche just never got up. She was always voting Sally.
But it wasn't.
I think she could have stood up. I think it was everyone's choice to stand up.
But it wasn't like necessarily the other four like, okay, we're gonna vote together, and they just got caught in the minority. Like, no, Kat and convincingly Sally thought Johnson was going and voted against them. Johnson and Ben thought Don was going and voting against them. So it does seem like just such fractured factions. Yeah, that Mark was able to kind of herd at the end of the day. So again, I've been having a really good time with this so far. I think this cast really is bringing it in terms of the calamity and the chaos. Now, look, maybe we'll hit this point where like all the big sparkly braggadocious personalities get voted out and the gameplay slows down. Maybe that's the case, but for now, I am enjoying all the fast-paced malarkey that is happening. And again, Australian Survivor, especially as of late, pretty unpredictable in terms of where things are going to go. I still think Johnson is served up as a platter, especially if Baron go to Tribal Council next, of the easy one to take out, especially after such like a last-minute scrambly vote. But who the hell knows with this group, considering that if Johnson's name is as easy as Don's was going into the vote this time around, it might circle back around to someone else completely by the end of the day.
Or as Rich's was coming back from the challenge. Like, I have enjoyed that about the season. And I think the editing was really good here in the live Tribal Council. Like, it was clearly very easy to follow. But then I also think I thought Kat was out the door. Kat was out the door. But yeah, I think there was some suspense because it showed you saying Brooke, like with Brooke being like, I don't want to do that.
Want to do but I also, I
wondered if that would be clearly probably not, but like there was a little bit of a question, and that's good.
Because I think, as Brooke is going to say in confessional, as she should, it's all about building consensus at this point. And I think that Brooke, maybe perhaps if to your point, maybe observing more wisely than Mark, is like, let me just like not stick my neck out too far. I've got a good thing going right now. The last thing I want to do is like really push back on Johnson. So let me just like go with the flow and let Johnson continue to dig a hole for himself.
Yeah, and that's going to be reflected in my Chizzy points. Take it away, Jacob Sager Weinstein and MC Color.
1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3. It's getting kind of chizzy. 3, 2, 1.
All right, I will give 3 points to Brooke once we're talking about it. She seemed to get on well with Kat. Kat comes to her, right?
Yeah.
So with a bit of the bad lie, and I think she said that she liked Kat, but it's necessary. This is what I want you to be doing, like be in a good position, but not sticking your neck like fully out to get chopped. She has the idol, and I loved bringing Mark into that. Like to be in the power position without the blood on her hands, I think is great. So I'm giving 3 points to Brooke. I really struggled with the next two because I wanted to give to Faith and Mark, and I had question marks about both. But with Faith, like my question was that her name was brought up, and I didn't love that. But then I it got no traction, like to the point where actually the person bringing it up then got voted out. So like she was so protected and didn't even really stick her neck out as much to protect herself that I still feel like that's better. And then I'll give a point to Mark because I respect that he had the options. I respect that he's in that power. I respect that like his reads were good the entire episode around, well, like Kat is doing that now, or like they're a clear 3. Like how obvious are these things? Like really, maybe everyone else has something to answer to. But yeah, I dropped points because I'm like, I criticized yesterday people doing too much, and this was a lot. And I don't know that I can say the Kat was worth it. But I'll still give him a point. Nothing going on Bounty. I could have given like the Simon challenge moment, kind of like I did for Mark yesterday, but there was like really not a lot else going on with Simon, that whole tribe, and then otherwise,
like we get a lot of posturing from Harry of like, this is what I'm going to do.
No,
like,
that's
great. Tune in tomorrow to see the post-town conclusion of that storyline.
Yeah. So Keely's name was also like subtly brought up. Like, I think Keely at least is maybe more subtle, but she's like the one speaking to Mark at the very beginning. At Tribal Council, I didn't like what Tez did. I love Don, but I don't think I'm giving him a Chizzy point. It was so cute as well that Caleb was like, yeah, they'll believe that. And Don was like, I'm terrible. In my mind, that's how that interaction goes. Caleb's kind of just floating. Blanche didn't get up. And everyone else was like,
Blanche and Ben did find the flint. Does that mean anything?
They saw the flint in front of their face. Unfortunately, we do not give Chizzy points for that at this time. What are your points?
That's so interesting because I came in here being like, oh, well, this is going to be fairly, copy paste straightforward. No, I like this. I'm going to give 3 points to Mark. I think I agree. I understand your point about, is this putting him out too far in front? I have said this before. I'll continue to say that I think my Chizzy points are more so less forward facing and more based on like, what were you doing in this moment? And I think that I can understand a lot of the rationale as to why Mark did what he did. And I don't necessarily think this was as much of a like, hey, look at me, look what I'm capable of. Like, I think that Johnson is probably going to mount a coup because he saw what Mark did and is like, okay, that guy is able to whip some votes together. But I think that he has amassed too much security and safety within this by making this stand and being like, hey, this is what's going on. Let's all work together here. There's a lot of names being thrown out. There's a lot of calamity. Let me get something that unifies us all together. Was it in a very flashy visual way? Absolutely. But like you said, when you got a lot of time on Australian Survivor, I do think this is a situation he definitely diffused. He certainly has the work experience to reflect that. So 3 points for him to also like nip in the bud what he felt was going to be a problem down the line, especially if Kat's kept in the game and more time passes. Yeah, she doesn't have any power now, but like if she gets more time to possibly get enough people on the Faith train, maybe he won't be so lucky next time around. I'll give 2 points to Brooke because Brooke had an incredibly solid episode. Does find out I was nervous for a second. Then when Mark like physically got his hand on the idol, then it might be like, all right, and I'm going to use it.
And thank God he didn't, by the way. Like the best thing that everyone like Lyndall's getting with Loz and that Lyndall and Brooke are getting with each other is the connections they're all making through this. Like ticks across the board on that. I was so relieved as well when I saw Brooke having it in confessional, and I was like, great, you haven't like screwed over a long-term 45-day ally, hopefully, to hold this, and that would be incredibly messy. And
and it also shows again Mark's infatuation with Brooke, that he's like, maybe like 90% of other players he'd hold on to it, but this way he's like, no, here you go, here, take the clothes off my back, you can have my jacket, Daniel style. So I think that Brooke is in a very, as we expected in the preseason, she's in a very good position No one is saying her name. She's not as visible as someone like Mark from a returnee perspective. So I think he would always get targeted over her. And so I think she's set up incredibly well and seems to have a great headspace for the game. One I was really back and forth about. Like Faith, yes, is part of this group, really in tight with Mark, and was kept in the game against any sort of like counter shift that Kat was making against her. But I didn't necessarily see like a lot of activation on her part. So I ended up going with Keely, I think, for the one. I think that there's a reason that Mark maybe talked to her. She is the one to help get the information to Brooke and Faith. Yes, she might just be a conduit, but like, and also like, as much as maybe we're talking about Tez maybe unnecessarily clapping back at tribal council, like I thought what Keely brought up was very good from her perspective to be like, oh yeah, you threw my name out. Makes sense considering that we really haven't had any conversations. Like it's a very quiet game to the point where she is being targeted as the so-and-so coaster. But I think this episode showed that maybe she has more metal in this tribe than people like Johnson might think. So
Yeah.
the one was tough, but I think I just sort of went there based on some of the stuff Keely was doing at the 11th hour.
I did think about it. And like, look, Brooke lost someone who she didn't want to lose, but she's not in trouble. And like, again, this group seems fine. But if I'm Keely, I'm like, I kind of wanted to do Johnson if he's been saying my name. You know, like I
Yeah.
felt like Kat was a better win for Mark. Not worth it, but better, whose name has been brought up as we've seen by Kat. And for Faith, obviously, whose name is being paraded around without traction by Kat. Whereas, like, actually, of that group, for Keely and seemingly Brooke, who has a relationship with Kat, you'd rather it was Johnson. But it leaves, like, Brooke's, like, losing one of, I'm sure, many options.
Mhm.
But, like, it's, if anything, like, Keely's, like, keeping someone, well, Ben said it, but, like, keeping that power in a small amount of power in a group of people who are actively saying her name. So I'd be really leaning to Johnson as well. Like, again, you go along to get along, just like Brooke did. Like, I wouldn't go up against it, but it is like parts of that are kind of unfortunate as well. And then I also thought, like, and Mark is like talking to Keely. I felt like he pulled her up because she was his least close of the four. It's like, well, I can't talk. I don't want to talk to Faith and Brooke.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't like. And I feel like he and Brooke have said like they don't want people to know that. I'm not surprised that Brooke knew who Mark was, but like they didn't want people to know that they were close. So I feel like maybe he's hiding it because he's not as close to Keely, even though she was doing like good work there and actually making it happen so publicly. Like I feel like she got maybe a little bit more blood on her hands, which I didn't love as much. So those are the points. That's it. That's all I got. Do you have more?
I don't think I have any more. Again, it's been so far so good to me. I think it's definitely. I always come into Australian Survivor seasons with a bit lowered expectations, just because of what to expect from an ending perspective and whatever. You know, we talked about this in the draft a lot about the crapshoot that sometimes happens when it comes to these contestants. But so far, they are delivering in some of the stuff I love best about Australian Survivor, which is like flashy mistakes, essentially, especially stuff that dictates, you know, the first part of Australian Survivor seasons typically. And so I very much had my taste satiated from that perspective, and I cannot wait to have them continue. And especially because, listen, we knew the narrative was going to be about these returning players. And so if indeed next episode is going to be all about like the rise of Harry and I guess the reign of Mark, I'm very excited to see not only how those narratives will manifest, but then also inevitably when a swap or a merge happens, will they be, you know, opposite ends of the magnet or too similar to repel one another?
Yeah, well, we're going to have a fun time. Mostly you're going to be covering a lot of it. I will still be here, hopefully, to talk to world-leading traders expert, one day too late, Puya, for episode 3 tomorrow. There will be X interviews. I had question marks around it. I think we're going to get all the X interviews and we're going to put them out in like weekly podcasts. So we'll be doing that. And that's it. At Shannon Gates, so you don't miss it. Global Survivor. We know Global Survivor feed so that you have it all. Mike, what can people find from you?
Well, if you want to hear me talk some traders, besides perhaps disparaging the person who made the crossover here, I actually was on with Puya and Rob for a traders feedback show, but more so a finale preview. Gave my thoughts about very opinionated week of traders looking ahead to the finale on a Thursday. But of course, the big to-do is that Wednesday, Survivor 50 premieres. If you have not checked out all my preseason
Thursday
content,
for the Australians.
Thursday for the Australians.
On
Just, you know,
Stan.
and on Stan. So make sure you get your Stan subscriptions active people.
It is right for Survivor to be on Stan.
So
Probably.
true.
Like,
so
it's really
true.
annoying, but we do have, like, it's a big Stan culture.
Well, at the time this is coming out, you probably have a little less than 48 hours to check out all the stuff, if you haven't yet, that I've been able to do. But it's gotten me incredibly excited to see what actually happens when we have these 24 people playing together. So feel free to check all of that out. And obviously much more to come with that in terms of the B&B, in terms of Exit Press for Parade. Otherwise, you can check out everything I'm doing out there in the world at a Mike Bloom type.
Awesome. Well, tomorrow, another episode. Racing through the season. I will be back for that. Thank you, Mike. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to our team behind the scenes, and I will hopefully see you then. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.